Hi there and welcome to my garden and today's craft session. Today I wanted to look at ice dyeing, which is a method of tie dyeing, I guess. So what you will need for this is some dye. You can use the packets of Dylon dye that are all in ones. You can also buy specific tie-dye dyes, which come in neat little bottles like this. I think this brand is Tulip, and you just get a powdered amount in the bottom of the bottle. And then of course you'll need some fabric. What you want to look for in a fabric is that it's either cotton or viscose or linen. Generally those fabrics will dye better than any others. Sometimes you find if you've got polyester the dye doesn't quite catch onto the fabric well enough. And your fabric doesn't have to be white. I've got a beige jumper here that I want to upcycle. It's looking a bit tired now, it's had a bit of bleach poured on it, so I thought I'd give it a new lease of life. So apart from your fabric, you'll also need a tray with a grill on top of it. Now this is just my cooling rack that I use when I've been baking, and this is an old tray out of an oven. You can use the disposable trays, and something smaller than this would work as well. In fact, I've got two trays down here because I'm going to try two different techniques just to give you a feel for what you can do. So there's another tray there. Essentially the reason for you having the rack is that once you put the ice on the fabric, you want it all to dribble on through into the bottom pan. So yes, you'll need some big bags of ice. You'll also need some elastic bands as well. The fabric you will have washed. This is damp, it hasn't been dried, and that'll help the colour to soak in a lot faster. And then there's different ways really of preparing your fabric. You can just crunch it all up into a bit of a ball and wrap the elastic band around it. You could try a folding technique. So if you just sort of do a bit of a waffle fold, so backwards and forwards. I think that's what I'm going to try with this one. So I'm just folding that backwards and forwards on itself. Getting the sleeves involved there as well. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to crumple it up this way, backwards and forwards this way. And then I'm just going to tie that to secure it with an elastic band. I'll put a couple on there just to make sure. Okay, so that's my first crumpled t-shirt. And then for this one, I was thinking about trying a shibori technique. Now, shibori is a way of arranging the fabric when you're tie-dyeing. And this one, I'm going to create these little knots here and then tie elastic bands around those, and I'm just going to randomly make some of those sort of all over the jumper. I am taking through both sides of the fabric here. Okay, so I've finished tying up my other jumper, and then I'm just going to crumple that up then onto the tray, and I put this bigger item on the bigger tray, and then it's got plenty of room then. Okay, One of the reasons for me doing this outside is because it can get a bit messy. I do have a plastic sheet that I could put on the table, but it's a perfectly nice day today, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it outside. It doesn't matter then if I spill any of the dye. Speaking of which, one of my bottles has exploded in my bag, so I am getting dye all over me. I don't have any rubber gloves today, something I neglected to think about, but if you can, guys, I would probably put gloves on your hands just to save yourself from having multicoloured fingers. So you need to go ahead and choose your colours. I've got quite a lot of colours here. Obviously you could just work with one colour. If you just put a little bit on, then you'll get the colour of the fabric coming through as well. So once you've chosen your dyes, I'm going to go with an orange, a brown and a black on one of my items, and then on my other item I'm going to go for a pink and a blue, and hopefully I'll get some nice purple colours coming in through that then. So dyes chosen, and then you need to go and get your bags of ice. I've got a couple of big bags of ice. I probably won't use all of it. I'll probably use half a bag on each fabric, I think. So I've got my bag of ice. It's just one of the big 2 kilogram ones that you can get at the supermarket. And I'm just going to place that on top of my fabrics. So I've got my 2 trays here. I've popped ice on top of my fabric, sort of piled it up around so it doesn't slip down off the sides. And now what I'm going to do is go ahead and just sprinkle bits of the dye over the fabric. I mean, you could put one colour on one side, another colour on the other side. It's totally up to you. I think I'm just going to go a little bit random with them both. Now, if it's windy, you need to make sure that you're protecting against that so that your fabric doesn't spray everywhere, especially if you're doing it outside like me. I'm getting this all around the sides, all over the tops of the ice. So the more dye that you put on, the more concentrated the colours are going to be. The less you put on, the less concentrated they're going to be. So I'll just show you what I've gone ahead and done here. And then I'm just going to leave these 2 trays. I'm going to pop this bench over them and give them a bit of shade, and then the ice will melt a little bit slower. It is melting quite fast today with it being warm. So all the ice is melted now on my fabric. And now what you need to do is wait. You'll need to wait for probably about 6 to 8 hours, by which time all of the dye will have soaked into the fabric. At which point then you'll probably need to just look at the packet instructions of the dye that you've used. With my dye, I'll need to then put it in the washing machine on a hot temperature. That'll then help to set the dye further into the fabric. And then obviously your usual process, drying your fabric and whatnot. So once all that's done, I'll come back to you and show you what my results are. Okay, so I left my t-shirts for a while and then I washed them in the washing machine, and this is how they came out. I'm quite happy with them, although the colour's not quite as saturated as I imagined it would be, but that quite suits me. I quite like pastel colours in the summertime, and so for me that's perfect. I think maybe next time if I did want more saturated colours, I'd probably use more colour on. And I did see a hint at making the colours more saturated, and that was to cover your fabric up in a bag after all the ice had melted. So maybe I'll try that next time if I do decide that I want a bit more of a saturated colour. But yeah, I'm quite happy with the results. So I hope you've enjoyed this session, and I'll see you again next time. Bye.